It all starts with people whispering about a rumor that's been spreading around. Word on the street is about the terrifying legend of a slug-headed phantom that single-handedly wiped out an entire family. Most folks might write this off as just another silly monster story meant to scare people. However, this specific case has a super bizarre detail that makes it completely different from all the rest. That's because the outcome of this whole tragedy turned out to be absolutely shocking. A few days after the attack, the phantom's own head was found hanging right at the entrance of the victim's home, and the one who did something so extreme was the sole survivor of the tragedy, the eldest son, who is only 10 years old. I can already tell the MC is an absolute legend, avenging his parents like that. Because of this impossible feat, the villagers started spreading rumors that the boy isn't even human. The story then takes us to a quiet village surrounded by beautiful mountains, where it all went down. Right in the middle of the ordinary houses sits the family's old home, which was destroyed by the monster. Right in the yard, you can still see the creature's head impaled on top of a bloody bamboo stick. Just then, a mysterious figure wearing a dark cloak arrives at the scene, realizing she's finally found the right house. This is the phantom hunter Mong Ryan, who ironically feels a bit sorry seeing the pathetic state of the monster. She remembers the local villagers begging her in utter desperation to take the boy out, claiming he was a monster in disguise. Mong Ryan starts overthinking the idea of a phantom being able to perfectly transform into a 10-year-old kid. After all, dozens of children wouldn't have the strength to defeat a creature like that, let alone the coldness to display its head like a trophy. Determined to find out the truth with her own eyes, she opens the door to the residence. Stepping inside, the hunter runs into the boy sitting all by himself in a corner of the yard. Covered in injuries, the youngster notices her presence and asks who she is. She introduces herself as Mong Ryan, a phantom hunter, and the boy is caught off guard finding out what she does. After that, the two of them just stare each other down. She realizes that this tiny little boy really is the terrifying monster the villagers were talking about. Seeing the empty look in the kid's eyes, she understands why the villagers were terrified, but she chooses not to jump to conclusions about him. Looking at the shallow graves nearby, she figures out from his dirt-stained body that he dug his family's graves all by himself. Thinking he probably hasn't had anything to eat or drink for days, the hunter decides to reach into her supplies and places a bowl of porridge on the ground. Right in front of the boy, Mong Ryan tells him to eat, but the kid gets confused and questions why she's giving him food. He asks if she didn't come all the way here specifically to end him, fulfilling the frightened villager's request. The boy explains that everyone always disliked him because of his strange eyes, and now that they saw him defeat a phantom, they just want him gone. Hearing such a mature vent for a kid his age, Mong Ryan is deeply touched. She decides to sit down right next to him and asks him to tell her in detail how he actually managed to defeat the creature. At that moment, memories of that terrible night begin to flood the youngster's mind. He remembers perfectly seeing the lifeless bodies of his parents lying on the ground. The boy stayed hidden in complete silence while the terrible monster devoured the rest of his family. He peeked at everything through a crack in the wooden door. The shocking image of that tragedy was burned into the kid's mind forever, but seeing that, he couldn't just sit back and do nothing. Driven by a burning desire for payback, the boy managed to put together a sharp, makeshift bamboo spear. With crazy courage, he used every bit of his strength to drive the weapon straight into the terrible monster's neck. The kid explains that he hid in the swamp, tracked the creature's trail, sold his belongings to buy info, and got his payback. Man, this MC is the real deal. I'm already a fan. Mong Ryan asks why he displayed the head at the gate, and he answers that he wanted to return the exact same cruelty the monster inflicted. Even though it sounds like an unbelievable story coming from a child, she can tell from his eyes that there isn't a single lie in his words. She notices the bamboo treated with salt and knows that, even with that trick, taking down a phantom like that is a tough job even for grown-ups. Mong Ryan notices the boy's composure, determination, and precision, realizing he was practically born to be a phantom hunter. The kid confesses that, now that his payback is fully taken care of, he has no reason left to keep living. Looking down, he reveals that his only remaining wish is simply to pass away peacefully right there near his family. Hearing that, Mong Ryan simply flicks the kid right on his forehead. The boy is left totally confused, and she decides to ask for his name, finding out that he's called Issei. Right after, the hunter asks if he really thinks he achieved true payback just by hanging that head on the gate. She questions if he's not just settling for this result, pretending that this was already enough for him. Mong Ryan questions how the kid can be satisfied with taking down just one single phantom after losing his whole family and his own will to live. Then, she turns her back and lets him know that, since he's just an ordinary human and not a monster, the hunt request is cancelled, saying a cold goodbye. After listening to that, Is is left deep in thought. The scene shifts to late afternoon in the village, where the village chief reacts with extreme outrage and shock upon hearing Mong Ryan's decision. The man yells in annoyance, asking if she's really not going to finish the kid, but she calmly responds that the youngster is just a normal human being. He tries to offer even more money to win her over, but the hunter fires back instantly, asking what's the deal with so much hatred against a kid. The chief throws a fit, pointing at the boy's eerie eyes, insisting that he's a cursed creature who will bring complete ruin to the whole village. With total contempt, Mong Ryan hits him with the harsh truth, saying that in reality, the folks in this village look like the real monsters to her. She warns that rejecting a child just for being different is a massive mistake, and warns that hoarding so much resentment is only going to end up attracting real phantoms. The elder stubbornly insists that the boy is the one drawing the creatures in, but she realizes those ignorant folks will never listen to reason. Determined to handle the situation her own way, Mong Ryan slides off part of her headwear and reveals a sharp horn on her head, startling the villager. Showing off her imposing true identity right in front of everyone, she drops a stern warning for no one to dare mess with the young orphan ever again. With an intimidating glare and eyes glowing bright red, she warns that anyone who disobeys will face harsh punishment from her, a fearsome decayed. The villager falls to the ground terrified, screaming for help, but she explains that her kind has a pact with humans to hunt down monsters. She sarcastically remarks that to narrow minds everything looks the same, and states once more that the job to eliminate the kid is officially off. As the hunter walks away into the darkness, the man vents in anger, unable to accept that he hired a supposed monster to help them out. Trembling with rage and terror, the village chief panics, not knowing what to do from here on out to solve this terrible problem. Overcome by ignorance, the villagers come to the cowardly conclusion that they have no choice but to take matters into their own hands. Fully armed, they march in a frenzy, with the sick goal of protecting the village from the child. In the next moment, sparks of fire start spreading out of control all over Ice's old home. The villagers surround the house and set fire to everything, watching the criminal arson consume the residents mercilessly in the middle of the night. The chief starts laughing like a total maniac, proud and shouting that they should have burned the place down right from the start. Man, these guys are the real monsters, a bunch of absolute jerks. They shout that without a home, the little monster won't be able to stay there anymore, while the fire creeps dangerously close to the makeshift graves. Desperate to see the graves of his parents and siblings threatened by the flames, Issei runs toward the fire to try and protect his family's resting place. The completely unhinged man keeps laughing out loud, telling the flames to burn the boy until he turns into nothing but ashes. Suddenly, a monster starts taking shape out of nowhere, and all the negative energy and resentment from the villagers begin to get channeled together. Out of the people's sick hatred, a brand new, colossal, multi-eyed phantom terrifyingly materializes right in the middle of the village. The gigantic creature roars in fury, ordering everything around to burn, spreading massive destruction with its dark power. Issei watches that terrifying apparition in complete shock, realizing that another awful phantom just appeared right in front of him. The bizarre monster roars wildly, showing off razor-sharp teeth and an extremely menacing dark purple aura. Without hesitating, the phantom fires a devastating purple energy beam that hits the ground directly where the boy was standing. The youngster can barely react in time against the terrifying speed and huge destructive power of that surprise attack. With the force of the violent blast, Ice is hurled far through the air, letting out a painful groan as he takes a direct hit. He goes rolling out of control across the dirt ground right through the wreckage that keeps burning in flames. Down on the ground and completely covered in blood, the kid pushes himself to stay conscious despite all the damage to his body. Looking to the side, despair takes over as he sees that his family's makeshift resting places were totally destroyed. With the little strength he has left, the youngster tries to push himself off the ground to stand up and face the terrible threat. One more time, he stares down the gigantic phantom emerging from the smoke, realizing he'll have to fight again if he wants to make it through the night. Consumed by rage, he laments bitterly that they took his family and are now destroying even his chance to pass away alongside them. Amidst that purple smoke, the twisted face of the village chief appears, laughing like crazy in a terrifying way. The phantom tries to crush the boy with a brutal strike, scattering blood and wreckage all over the yard. Holding his makeshift weapon tightly, Ice thinks to himself that he believed he had absolutely nothing left to lose in this cruel world. However, seeing the eternal rest of his loved ones being desecrated, he realizes in a flash of fury that there's still something precious left to protect. In that moment of danger, Mong Ryan's words come rushing back to his mind, asking if he really thought that was real payback. Her voice keeps echoing in his head, asking if he was just accepting that bad outcome out of pure resignation. Those memories spark a deep hatred inside Ice's chest, awakening a wild fury and a terrifying determination in his eyes. Out of nowhere, a massive, violent burst of purple energy explodes around the kid, cracking the ground beneath him, with his hidden power awakening in a brutal way. Issei launches himself with everything he's got straight toward the giant monster's maw. The twisted souls inside the phantom keep whispering cruelly that he lost his family, his will to live, and everything else. Mong Ryan's harsh words echo once more in Ice's mind, questioning how he could be satisfied taking down just one creature. Meanwhile, the giant, bizarre monster formed by the villagers' souls roars in total fury right in the middle of the ruined yard. The phantom opens its huge maw packed with sharp teeth to swallow the boy whole once and for all. However, Ise gathers his last bit of strength and leaps forward, driving his axe straight into the center of the monster's giant eye. The terrible creature stumbles and writhes in pure pain, while the youngster lands on the ground surrounded by a powerful purple energy. The kid reaches out his hand glowing with mystical flames and declares that he finally understands the true meaning of his payback. He states with a glare of pure rage and resolve that his settling of scores will only end when every single phantom is destroyed. But right after making that heroic vow, the youngster completely runs out of energy, and his arm begins to drop limply. Unable to handle the extreme exhaustion and the severity of his wounds, the kid ends up passing out right in the middle of all that smoke. However, before he falls helpless onto the dirt, Mong Ryan's steady hand appears to catch the boy's arm securely. The phantom hunter stomps on the ground with insane power, releasing a tremendous mystical shockwave all around her. Carrying the kid without the slightest effort, she fires off a devastating purple energy strike that completely vaporizes the phantom. The monster's giant eye, which still had the axe stuck in it, goes wide in pure terror before completely dissolving into thin air. Mong Ryan observes the unconscious boy in her arms, deeply impressed that he never backs down against monsters even though he's so small. She holds him gently and praises young Issei, recognizing the off-the-charts bravery he showed during the fight. She glares with deep disgust at the village and says coldly that those intolerant people are pathetic compared to the boy. The hunter explains that resentment creates demonic energy that draws monsters in, which is why she warned them to stop with all the cruelty. She points out that even the arrival of the first phantom that ruined his family might have been a direct result of the villagers' own malice. Showing zero mercy, Mong Ryan commands that they pay penance for the terrible suffering they brought upon Issa's family. With one final flex of her destructive strength, the phantom hunter clears out that burning area once and for all. The macabre remains, and teeth of the defeated creature start to completely dissolve, fading away under the morning light. The monster lets out its final, agonized roar of defeat before vanishing entirely from that world. Holding the boy, Mong Ryan casually walks away with her back to the destruction, commenting that the creature was making way too much noise for her taste. Sometime later, Ise begins to regain consciousness in a bed, remembering his promise to wipe out every phantom in existence. Mong Ryan approves of his choice, saying that if he can manage to survive even while living as a vengeful fiend, brighter days will surely come. She promises to help him gain the strength needed for his payback, and that she'll look after him until he can stand on his own 2 feet. With the sun rising in the background, the hunter walks away carrying young Issei, set on adopting him from that moment on. The story jumps to a peaceful, quiet place where a gorgeous butterfly with orange wings flies gently under the blue sky. The butterfly glides smoothly near the hunter's long, striking purple hair in the yard. While the insect lands softly on Mong Ryan's shoulder, Ice rests peacefully in a bed, covered in bandages all over his body. The boy starts moving slowly and lets out a light groan of pain as he wakes up from his long, deep recovery nap. Noticing the movement in the bed, Mong Ryan calmly asks if he's finally awake from that forced rest. The youngster tries to speak, and she patiently introduces herself again as Mong Ryan, the phantom hunter who saved him from passing away. She tells him straight up that he can hate her if he wants to, since she chose to save him from that situation purely on a whim. At that moment, the terrible memories of the battle against the new giant phantom come rushing back into the kid's mind. He remembers with sadness seeing the graves he had dug for his family members getting completely destroyed by the flames. His last clear memory of that tragic night is the mysterious hunter carrying him away in her arms during the sunrise. The youngster realizes with a heavy heart that the destruction of his parents' and siblings' graves wasn't just a bad dream. Unfortunately, Issei sits up in bed and is shocked looking at his own skin under the bandages, noticing there isn't even a single burn scar left behind. He gives thanks for the medical care and praises the decayed people, leaving the hunter surprised that he stays so calm even knowing what she is. The boy explains that she treated him really well and that's all that matters, making her quietly realize that he's a kid free of prejudice. Mong Ryan asks if his name was really Issa, and the kid confirms it in a very straightforward and serious tone. She asks if he's thought about her offer to follow her and learn the arts of exorcism, praising the boy's great natural talent. Issei admits that getting a place to stay and free training sounds almost too good to be true, confessing that it makes him a bit suspicious. The hunter smiles, finding his cleverness funny, and warns that if he really wants to go with her, he'll need to prepare himself big time. She reveals that the training will take place in the decayed realm, an environment packed with demonic energy and extremely hostile to humans. Mong Ryan warns that her training methods are so brutal, they'll make every day of his life feel like absolute torture. If he doesn't want it, I'll take it. Sign me up. Facing that scary warning, young Isse repeats the word torture with an extremely thoughtful and mysterious look. Surprising the hunter, he says he actually likes the idea, because without rigorous training like that, he'd never be able to wipe out the monsters. He officially decides to accept the offer and follow Mong Ryan, making the powerful phantom hunter let out a subtle smirk. Mong Ryan confesses she was just trying to scare him a little earlier with her warnings, but realizes his determination is truly rock solid. She then commands him to eat up, as the kid needs to fully recover from his injuries before they can head out anywhere else. With a huge appetite, Isse resolutely reaches out to grab the bowl of warm food that was specially prepared for his recovery. As she steps away, the hunter glances back with a little smile and tells him to make sure he finishes every single bite on his plate. This time, he silently agrees and starts scarfing down the meal quickly, set on regaining his energy as fast as possible in bed. The story then takes us to a mysterious, massive mountain range covered in thick, quiet fog under a cloudy sky. As they walk, the kid mentions that the weather is weird, and she explains it's due to the evil energy of the place, warning him never to cross the sacred rope. Taking a few more steps down the misty mountain trail, the phantom hunter lets him know they've finally reached their destination. Standing before a massive wooden gate, she reveals that right there lies the entrance to the phantom guardian's temple, where he'll be living in the decayed realm. The ancient sign on the gate strictly warns that this temple guarded by spirits is forbidden ground for any ordinary human. The kid asks if it's really okay for a human to go in there, and she teases him back, asking if he suddenly got scared. He explains he was just worried about causing trouble for her, making the hunter think silently that he's a very unusual boy. Mong Ryan tells him not to worry, stating with authority that no decayed in the temple would dare question the orders of their own leader. Issei repeats that intriguing title in his head, trying to grasp the immense importance and true standing the hunter holds in that place. When the massive wooden gate finally swings open, the kid's eyes go wide in complete shock and awe at what he sees. Right before him appears a gorgeous, giant hidden city tucked away in the mountains, packed with ancient temples and colorful trees. Surprised, Issei comments that it looks like a completely different world, and she proudly asks if he doesn't think the place is beautiful. Watching the locals walking around the big temple square, the kid wonders to himself if all those people in the distance are dokabes. A few residents with horns on their heads start gossiping indignantly at the entrance, questioning how a simple human dares to enter the sacred temple. Two young decayed kids watch the boy walk past with serious, suspicious glares due to his unusual presence there. Out of nowhere, Mong Ryan shouts out loud to everyone present, grandly announcing that Issei will be her new exorcism apprentice. She commands in a firm voice for all residents to treat the kid with care and respect, because from now on, he's part of their family. The Dokayebis listen to the strong, decisive words of their leader with full attention, accepting the announcement without hesitation. The locals quickly smile in a friendly way and say if the boss brought him, then it's all good, commenting that it's awesome to have a new member in the community. Is gets super thoughtful, realizing that it took just a single word from Mong Ryan for everyone there to accept him instantly. The hunter smiles proudly, thinking the kid is remarkable, and decides that loud welcome was more than enough as an initiation rite. She then invites him to partake in the most important part of any phantom hunt, guiding him to a table stacked with generous plates of food. The leader orders the friendly cook to bring even more heavy plates to the table, demanding a special focus on meat dishes. Sitting before the feast, Issei asks what all this food has to do with hunting phantoms. Not getting the connection to training, Mong Ryan affectionately places her hand on his head and jokingly lets him know that he's got a big problem if he wants to practice exorcism. She explains that he's forgetting, he's still just a growing kid, and that a child's duty is to eat and sleep a ton. The hunter warns that if he doesn't build up his body while he's growing, he's going to deeply regret it once he becomes a real hunter. The boy gets the advice and decides to eat as much as he can, accepting that building a strong body is step one for his payback. He starts wolfing down the pieces of meat quickly with his cheeks stuffed, making the phantom hunter quite pleased beside him. Suddenly, cheerful, fast footsteps are heard approaching the table, and an excited voice calls out for the temple leader. A little decayed girl with light purple hair named Gong-ah comes running in super happy, carrying a huge bowl packed with meat. Looks like we just found our MC's future best friend. Mong Ryan says goodbye, mentioning she has pending tasks, and tells Gong-ah to guide the boy to his room after making sure he eats everything. The girl excitedly accepts the mission, while Issei, with his mouth full of food, breaks into a cold sweat thinking this is the real torture. Gong-ah starts playfully messing with his hair out of curiosity over his lack of horns and asks his age, with the boy quietly answering that he's 10. She's completely shocked learning he's only 10 while acting so mature, whereas the youngster finds it weird that she acts so childish at 22. The old cook laughs and explains that humans age twice as fast as dokaebis, which means Gong-ah is really only 1 year older mentally. Either way, the girl celebrates hype style, saying that makes her Issa's big sister and that she's super happy to have a little brother. The chef pats Gong-ah's head and asks her to take good care of him, with the little girl brightly promising she'll look after her new brother. The young orphan just observes her in silence for a brief moment with his usual calm, serious, and pretty mysterious look. A little later, Ice shows up walking with difficulty while holding his completely stuffed stomach from eating so much meat. He complains that he ate way too much, but the girl laughs in a friendly way, saying that since he's young, his stomach will digest it all super fast. Gong-ah remarks that he's super lucky to train directly under the boss, and the kid asks if the phantom hunter is really that incredible. The girl surprisingly reveals that Mong Ryan is a living legend who's been hunting monsters for 300 years, being far stronger than all the dokebis there combined. The kid reflects on the fact that she's lived for over 300 years, realizing just how vastly different the realities of humans and dokebis actually are. He concludes thinking that, despite everything, looking closely at Gong-ah and Mong Ryan, he can't see much of a difference between them and regular people. Looking at the girl's genuine smile, Issei realizes he's feeling a warm, welcoming human connection that he never got to see in his old village. All of that feels super strange and new to him, until suddenly a very arrogant voice echoes through the courtyard, shouting for the human to freeze right there. They turn around and come face to face with an angry group, complaining that the kid dared to step into the realm and is even training directly with their busy boss. The ringleader, a young blue-haired dokebi, cracks his knuckles with a mean smirk and invites them to have a not-so-friendly little chat. Gong-ah gets extremely nervous, realizing that the guy right in front of them is Il-Chui and his crew of temple troublemakers. The bully looks down on the boy mockingly, while the young orphan just wonders if they're the type that loves starting trouble for no reason. Time passes slowly in the area, and the temple sky begins to take on gorgeous orange hues with the arrival of sunset over the mountains. Gong-ah desperately tries to step in, yelling at the group of bullies and demanding to know what they think they're doing there. However, young Issei appears completely bruised and hunched over in pain in the middle of the yard, showing he took a severe beating. The girl warns that the boss won't let this slide, but the rival fires back, saying that was just a perfectly normal sparring session in the temple. He mocks, saying he just wanted to put the human in his place so he wouldn't end up passing away against a real monster, claiming the kid is way too weak. The bully reveals his jealousy behind the attack, unable to accept that the hunter chose to train such a fragile kid instead of him. The orphan pushes himself up with difficulty, wiping away his own blood, and understands that all that violence was brushed off as just simple practice. With total composure, the kid apologizes to the bully, peacefully commenting that he thought they were just picking on him. Ise confesses he took the hits quietly to avoid causing trouble in the temple, apologizing for feeling like he ended up ruining the group's practice. Hearing such a genuine and mature reasoning coming from his own victim, Ilchui's eyes go wide and he's left completely speechless. Annoyed by the kid's attitude, the bully completely loses his cool and connects another extremely violent punch right on Ice's face. He starts unleashing a rapid, aggressive combo of strikes against the boy, who just tries to shield himself from the unrelenting onslaught. The attacker yells in a rage, asking if the kid thinks he's better than him just because he was holding back his punches so he wouldn't end him. The young orphan keeps taking hit after hit to the face and body from the furious rival's avalanche of fast strikes. However, the bully realizes angrily that even though he's beating the kid down without mercy, the fight feels totally unsatisfying to him. That's because he notices the kid refuses to close his eyes for even a second, keeping his glare locked on him even while taking the hits. The rival gets infuriated by that defiant glare, but Ise stays locked in and calmly notices that all of his opponent's strikes follow a repetitive pattern. Just then, the attacker and everyone around widen their eyes in shock as they feel a sudden, dangerous shift in Ice's combat stance. With crazy speed, the kid dodges the rival's strike and lunges forward, throwing a counterpunch packed with all his mystical strength. The bully sees the kid's fist coming straight at him, and his pupils dilate in sheer shock as he realizes he won't be able to dodge in time. Ice's clean, violent punch hits the opponent full force right in the middle of the training yard, sending out a massive shockwave. The rival clutches his own bruised face with an expression of pure physical pain, breaking into a cold sweat and unable to believe what just happened. The bully ends up dropping flat on his back, completely dazed and drained of strength from the powerful punch he took straight to the jaw. Heavily winded and bleeding, Ise regrets that his reach is short and remembers his mentor's advice about the importance of eating well. He walks over to the downed attacker and says that, even if he seems weak, he'd prefer if his opponent fought with everything he's got in future battles. The kid extends a hand to help him up, reminding the rival that real monsters in the forest won't show anyone any mercy. With a determined look and showing zero weakness, the boy invites his opponent to another sparring session down the road. Night falls softly, wrapping the beautiful, quiet mountain temple in a starry blanket of deep calm. Inside one of the temple rooms, Mong Ryan observes the injured boy with a very serious and thoughtful look on her face. She remarks directly that the kid managed to get himself into a pathetic, beat-up state on his very first day of training. She says she heard about the commotion and calls him over to heal his wounds, while the boy tries to brush it off, saying it was just a routine practice match. The Phantom Hunter brings her hand close to Ise, releasing a bright green mystical energy to start treating his injuries. The boy recognizes the healing magic, and she remarks that roughhousing is part of growing up, but tells him to come to her if things go overboard. The hunter asks if he managed to land at least one hit on the bully, and the kid answers with a lie, telling her she doesn't need to worry about that. Ise claims the rival didn't get hit once, explaining he preferred not to fight back so he wouldn't cause trouble as a guest in the temple. Annoyed by the lie, Mong Ryan grabs Ice's face with her magical hand and lifts him into the air with ease, scaring the kid big time. She complains that she's busy fixing up a stubborn brat's face, and he instantly realizes he upset his mentor with his excuse. She reminds him she introduced him as family and orders him to stop acting like a shy guest, making the boy promise to keep the advice in mind. To avoid any misunderstanding, he tries to explain himself, assuring her he didn't just take the hits out of shyness or his status. The boy confesses that his rival was fighting with total seriousness and that he simply wasn't able to land a single strike during the fight. She agrees sharply, saying that's obvious. Revealing that the rival has enough talent to train toe-to-toe with adults, Ise gets thoughtful over the reveal about his strength and asks if, with so much combat skill, the rival would be capable of hunting phantoms. With an extremely serious and deep glare, she answers with absolute certainty that if the rival went hunting monsters, he'd pass away without a doubt. She points out the irony, explaining that even though the bully is stronger than Ise, he'd fail in real combat because he lacks the kid's level-headed composure. The hunter explains that exorcism isn't just about brute force, reminding him that he only defeated the phantom by using salt after discovering its weakness. She states that Il-Chui would meet a quick end against a strong monster due to a lack of study, while Ise would fail if his luck simply ran out one day. Holding up 2 fingers, she warns that only by combining theoretical wisdom with martial arts techniques does practicing real exorcism become possible. Next, she decides to give the little orphan boy his very first important official task so he can kick off his training for real. To start building up his strength, young Issei begins an exhausting physical workout routine, running endlessly all around the temple's outer courtyard. He also trains by doing multiple tough sets of push-ups on the ground to properly develop his body's weak muscle structure. On top of all the daily physical effort, the boy spends hours locked in, studying amidst massive piles of books in the local library. Gong-ah watches him in complete silence, leaning on the table, finding the boy's impressive, stubborn dedication to his studies pretty endearing. She asks if he isn't bored after a whole week of that, but he answers that he needs to stay focused on the task to get the boss's approval. The boy explains that his mission is to read every single book in there, leaving the girl in total shock as she realizes the sheer scale of that challenge. The youngster jokes that she'd rather lose her mind than have to read that much, but the boy responds super calmly that he actually enjoys the reading habit. She points at his bruises and questions why they're there, making Issei explain that he needs to win a sparring match to prove his worth in combat. Gong-ah repeats the word in confusion, unable to imagine who the young orphan could be fighting every single day to end up so bruised. The boy appears once again, sitting on the courtyard stone floor, staring down his blue-haired rival after another tough round. The bully complains super annoyed about the boy being so stubborn, challenging him to a fight absolutely every single day. Issei responds that it's just combat practice, finally making Gong-ah realize where all those mysterious bruises were coming from. She wonders if taking down Il-Chui is his mystical task, knowing that humans rarely beat decayed, relying strictly on brute force. The boy explains to his rival that the training serves to prepare him, since real monsters in the forest won't leave him alone just because he doesn't want to fight. Extremely irritated by the human's boldness, the bully stomps hard on the stone ground. Cracking the floor around him, he warns that he was going easy and threatens to break the kid's bones if he's stubborn enough to come back and challenge him one more time. Gong-ah comes running desperately and steps in front of the boy, yelling out loud for the bully to stop trying to intimidate young Issei right now. The attacker walks away muttering in jealousy, complaining that the boy is always hiding behind girls and wondering what she even sees in him, showing zero fear of the threats. Young Issei states he won't blame him if his bones break, insisting that they fight again. Hearing such a brave and determined answer, the blue-haired bully stops in his tracks and falls completely silent, deep in thought. He stares at the temple building and concludes to himself with absolute certainty that this human kid is a complete lunatic. The blue-haired youth continues his way back silently alongside his two crew members who were accompanying him. But suddenly, he hears the orphan shouting his name out loud in the middle of the training yard and turns around pretty surprised back there. Stubborn Ice waves at him, calling him to fight again, and the boy kept challenging his rival to combat absolutely every single day. The bully throws furious strikes, asking why the kid ignores his warnings. Since he can't actually break his bones due to the rules, he yells at the boy to give up, insisting that a talentless human like him will never be able to overcome a warrior of the decayed race. The scene shows a green leaf slowly falling near the main temple building, marking the beginning of time passing in the training grounds. The three bullies watch the boy leave once more, but something about the human's behavior starts to deeply bother the group leader. The blue-haired guy wonders intriguingly why the kid's eyes don't even seem focused on him during their fights. This big, nagging, mysterious doubt starts haunting and disturbing the young warrior's thoughts as he walks through the temple. He trains by punching a straw practice dummy with intense rage, venting to his crew that the whole situation is maddening. The guy strikes the straw dummy in an extremely violent way, blowing off all his built-up frustration and rage from his training sessions. He keeps punching with determination, angrily questioning if the newbie really thinks he was sitting on his hands while the other was training. He vows to himself that he won't let the newbie steal Gong-ah's attention, let alone the approval of the great temple boss he looks up to. He proudly states that the gap in talent between them is massive and that the human kid's weak fists will never catch up to him. Time moves forward steadily at the location, showing the green leaves on the temple trees swaying gently under the cool breeze. The leaves completely change color, taking on vibrant reddish tones with the arrival of a new, chilly autumn season in the realm's mountains. A whole year passes since then, and the two young warriors appear once again squared up face-to-face in the large training yard. Gong-ah and the other locals watching the fight suddenly widen their eyes in complete shock, unable to believe the scene right in front of them. The bully himself stands totally frozen in disbelief, touching his own bruised face with a look of utter surprise and shock. Ise looks down at his own fist and realizes that, for the very first time, his attack managed to land a clean, direct hit on his rival. Trying to cover it up, the bully takes a few steps back and yells that he only got hit because he happened to slip by accident. Completely enraged over having his guard broken, the attacker rushes forward at high speed, throwing a punch with all his strength to finish Ise off. However, with extreme agility and ease, the young orphan flawlessly dodges his rival's punch without showing any physical effort. Il-Chui is incredibly shocked seeing Ise slip past all his strikes, thinking that he must have trained insanely hard throughout this entire year. He questions if his rival's year of training was worth more than his own, starting to realize that exorcism requires just as much knowledge as martial skill. The truth is that most demons possess tremendous, terrifying physical strength. Since humans can't bridge that gap through raw effort alone, there's a clear limit to hunting demons just by training the body. Even so, the blue-haired youth charges forward in anger to try and land another fast strike, the real secret that allows humans to break through that physical wall against such powerful creatures. Is precisely the theoretical knowledge they build up. Ise moves with surgical precision, ducking swiftly under his opponent's attack by fighting, while knowing the opponent's exact vital points and movement patterns. An impossible feat like exorcism becomes totally achievable. But all that theoretical wisdom is useless if physical strikes can't actually hit the target. Because of that, a warrior needs one more crucial element. They have to show true physical mastery in combat. Il-Chui gets hit full force by a rapid-fire sequence of strikes straight to his chest and face. Only when a warrior completely masters both the study and the practice of combat arts does it become possible to hunt real demons, even while possessing a fragile human body. The other young temple members watching the fight stand completely frozen in absolute amazement. Gong-ah is stunned seeing that Ise managed to defeat his rival with just 1 year of training at the facility. She's blown away by how overwhelming the victory was, while another youngster runs over to check if Il-Chui is okay after hitting the dirt. The day remains sunny and peaceful over the big Dokayebi temple courtyard. Gong-ah praises the kid, saying he's fantastic, but Ise banteringly replies that what's really incredible is her ability to talk non-stop. Just then, the two spot a group of black-cloaked warriors gearing up to head out from the location. The Grand Temple leader, Mong Ryan, stands before her warriors, going over the final travel instructions. She turns around a bit curious upon hearing Ise call her boss. Right at that moment, the boy asks where she's headed, and Mong Ryan answers that she'll need to be away for a few days. She explains she goes out every year to hunt demons and help humans out, proving to them that dokebis are peaceful beings. She recalls that she found him during last year's hunt, and Ise gets why she had visited his old village. Mong Ryan asks how the assignment she gave them is coming along, and Gong-ah excitedly tries to spill the news about the boy's big victory. Suddenly, a hand comes out from behind and rests on the boy's shoulder by surprise, catching him off guard. Il-Chui shows up, putting his arm around his rival, and tells the boss that Ise beat him fair and square in a sparring match. The boss is surprised to hear this, and the blue-haired youth praises the boy, promising to train even harder so he doesn't lose again. Ise finds it super strange that Il-Chui used his name in such a friendly way, while Gong-ah also finds that whole attitude suspicious. Mong Ryan pats his head, happy to see that the youngster matured and finally recognized his rival as his little brother. He lets out a silly chuckle, making Gong-ah realize instantly that it was just a scheme to win the boss's affection. Mong Ryan happily says goodbye, asking everyone to keep getting along great from here on out. Gui says he's glad Ise worked things out with Il-Chui, and the boy just calmly agrees with the situation Ise asks when the two got so close. And Gui reveals he was only pretending not to like him just to please his big brother. Il-Chui gets annoyed seeing his brother fall for the human's charm, but quickly invites the boys to head out and hang out together. He mentions the outing is guys only, leaving Gong-ah pretty annoyed over being left out. She lands a solid punch right on the insolent guy's face, while Ise stays thoughtful and happy, realizing he was called a brother. Night soon falls over the mountains, revealing a gorgeous full moon shining in the clear, starry sky. The temple sits in complete silence under the soft light of the few lit lanterns at the main entrance. Quietly, the large metal padlock on one of the wooden doors gets unlocked in the middle of the dark. The boys sneak into the temple armory, quietly calling out Il-Chui's name. Gui worries if they should really be there, while Il-Chui tells Ise to stop messing around and pick a weapon already. He proposes they settle who's the best through a real hunt outside the temple grounds. Ise reminds them the boss strictly forbade them from leaving until they became adults. Plus, there's no guarantee of finding any demon nearby. Gwagiol shares that the scouts heard a baby crying nearby, hinting it might be a child demon roaming the area. Hearing that, the blue-haired youth suddenly shifts gears and suggests they drop the idea of going out. The boy warns that it's super dangerous to assume that, since there are several types of terrible demons that mimic that exact sound. He warns about the dangers of acting without certainty, but Ilchui gets annoyed and accuses him of wanting to flex just because he reads too many books. Ilchui asks if the boy is coming with them or not, calling Ice a coward when he says he can't disobey the boss's orders. The blue-haired youth calls Gwagiol to head out already, and the youngest hype-mindedly agrees to follow his brother. Ilchui mutters and calls the human boy a pathetic fool as the trio heads down the steps of Guisu Temple toward the forest. Issei watches the group leave in silence with a very serious and thoughtful expression. Meanwhile, deep in the dark forest, a sinister silhouette with glowing red eyes lurks silently among the trees. The blue-haired youth firmly grips his iron mace, feeling his hunter blood boil and full of confidence for the upcoming clash. They chat about how this hunt before coming of age will serve as a true rite of passage to becoming full-fledged demon hunters. Ilchui flashes a proud, pretty smug smile as he agrees with his crewmate's logic, but soon the other kid in the group makes fun of Issei for choosing a small axe, saying they didn't come out to chop firewood. The trio's leader chuckles to himself, believing the human rival is completely terrified of the situation. He brags, recalling he once touched a demon's remains when he was super little, unlike the cowardly newbie. While Ilchui plans to prove his superiority in a real hunt, Issei worries if he made the right call deciding to tag along with them. The human boy recalls his readings about the child demon, which usually just annoys people with silly demands and would be easy to take down. Even so, the youngster stays extremely sharp, paying attention to every strange noise or movement around them in the dark. But Ice's biggest fear is the terrible possibility that the creature isn't actually the harmless demon they're imagining. Suddenly, an obnoxious, monstrous wailing starts echoing loudly through every corner of the forest. The terrifying shrieks keep spreading fast through the trees, making the atmosphere super tense. Before them appears a massive, bizarre four-legged creature with dozens of crying human heads attached to its body. The terrifying monster exudes a dreadful, hostile energy, while the twisted faces continue to scream in agony. Unaware of the immediate danger, the four boys keep walking slowly down the dark trail in the woods. Ilchui gets super confused, not finding anything there, swearing the scouts had heard a baby crying in that area. The other kids suggest they give up and head back to the temple, since there's no sign of any demon nearby. Totally annoyed, Ilchui raises his mace and yells at Issei, accusing him of ruining the hunt because of his previous victory, with all the calm in the world. Issei replies that he doesn't think he's better or stronger just because he won a practice match. The human boy confesses he only won because he got lucky and caught his rival off guard, lightly boosting his opponent's ego. Ilchui lowers his guard a bit and asks surprised if his rival really thinks so humbly about their fight. Issei praises his opponent's physical strength and martial skills, leaving the blue-haired warrior completely flustered, fake coughing to hide his embarrassment. Ilchui brags, saying the kid finally recognized his greatness. He proposes they become sworn brothers from here on out, leaving the human boy pretty surprised by the unexpected offer. Ise flashes a genuine smile and confesses he's just really happy because he always wanted a big brother to protect him. Seeing the kid's cute and honest reaction, Ilchui is left totally clueless on how to act and super embarrassed. However, before they can continue the conversation, the two are cut off by a sudden noise that startles them. The sound of a baby crying echoes from behind the bushes, making them believe they finally found the target demon. Hyped up, Ilchui sprints ahead shouting that whoever tags the demon first wins the competition. He runs laughing and asks his little brother to watch closely how a real big brother carries out an exorcism in practice. However, as he steps past the trees, the blue-haired youth widens his eyes in utter terror at what he sees before him. The terrifying creature emerges from the dense darkness, letting out high-pitched, extremely creepy shrieks. The others arrive tired right behind him, and Gwagiol asks terrified if the child demon was supposed to look that bizarre. Ilchui stammers in complete horror, agreeing that the creature does resemble a baby, but in a monstrous way. The monster opens its mouth packed with sharp teeth and lets out a gut-wrenching roar that makes the whole forest shake. The demon's distorted face stares down the young warriors in a menacing, terrifying way in the dead of night. They realize in horror that the abomination has multiple heads, smiling macabrely all over its body. Ise comes running to the spot and yells desperately for everyone to run away immediately, because that's no ordinary demon. Several long necks packed with heads start stretching out at high speed toward the terrified group. The human boy reacts fast and uses his shield to block a violent impact coming straight at him. The bizarre necks charge forward, slicing through the air near the young Dokebis, who barely manage to dodge the lethal attacks. Gwaegyeol stands completely frozen in terror. Seeing the monstrous heads coming straight for him, Ise heroically leaps and manages to shove the youngest out of the way to save him, but ends up taking a hit from the monster in the process. Down on the ground, the boy gives thanks for bringing his metal shield and immediately worries about his friend's condition. However, looking forward, the black-haired youth's eyes go wide in total desperation at what he sees. Il-Chui screams in desperation as he sees one of the demon's grotesque heads reach him and tear into his flesh. Woljang also takes a severe hit, screaming in pain as the monster's head violently bites into him. Gwaegyeol ends up dropping to the ground, severely wounded in the gut, bleeding heavily and lacking the strength to get up. The giant demon roars victoriously, leaving the young hunters completely cornered and injured in the middle of the forest. The creature's dozens of heads let out eerie laughs, openly mocking the helpless boy's desperation. A demon's threat level is based on the hunter's survival rate, ranging from level 1 to 9, with levels 9 through 7 being low tier A. Level 7 demon, for example, still offers a 70% survival rate for rookies on missions. However, everything changes drastically when facing a level 6 demon, where a rookie's survival rate plummets. The chance of a beginner hunter surviving against a terrible creature like that is a measly 20%. This level 6 abomination is an Aseongyong-ma, a powerful demon known for having multiple crying human heads. Ise realizes the situation is worst-case scenario upon confirming it's no mere child demon, but a lethal monster instead. To make matters worse, that low stat is for official hunters, while they're just injured kids with zero real experience. Despair takes over everyone as they realize that if they stay there, they'll be brutally finished off by the scary beast. Ise tries to stay calm, to think fast, and find the best possible choice to save them from the impending disaster. Il-Chui groans in pain on the ground while holding his wounds, completely unable to keep fighting. He cries in terror, experiencing firsthand that real demons are way more horrific and cruel than what he read in practice books. Holding his injured arm, he laments in tears for insisting on that foolish hunt and putting everyone in life-threatening danger. Woljang coughs up blood with great difficulty as he feels the severity of his own wounds caused by the brutal attack. Il-Chui yells desperately that Gwaegyeol was hit in the stomach and will pass away if he doesn't get urgent medical care right away. Knowing what to do and overcome by panic, the blue-haired youth enters complete desperation, thinking they're all going to meet their end right there. He wonders if they'll be able to escape that terrible monster carrying a severely injured teammate on their back. It's at that moment that a cold, painful proposal comes up. Leave the injured teammate behind so the others can escape. Ise watches his injured friend standing while holding firmly onto his shield and small combat axe. Il-Chui widens his eyes, unable to believe he actually heard such a selfish suggestion coming from his human companion. Ise pragmatically explains that their friend's wound is fatal and he won't survive the long trek back to Guisu Temple. Il-Chui yells in outrage at the idea of abandoning the youngest, but Ise asks him to notice that the demon mysteriously stopped attacking. He reveals he read that this demon prefers devouring prey, consumed by despair, and is just waiting for them to make a tough choice. The monster wants them to choose between abandoning their injured friend to flee or all passing away together fighting right there. The monster's plan is to make them carry the guilt of abandonment and Gwaegyeol's despair, but they seem to have no other survival option. Il-Chui cries heavily, realizing that this painful action really seems to be the only way to get out of that nightmare. Alive, Gwaegyeol cries in pain, naively asking his teammates if he's really going to pass away all alone in the dark forest. The injured youngest watches the demon's monstrous silhouette slowly creeping up on him in the dark. The multi-headed monstrous creature takes delight in the growing panic radiating from the cornered youngsters. Consumed by crushing guilt, the blue-haired youth starts crying, unable to make a final call. Suddenly, the human boy makes a quick move and throws a heavy object with all his strength toward the demon. The object flies high into the night sky and lands right next to the multi-headed creature's giant body. It turns out to be a smoke bomb that starts releasing a thick gas on the ground to blind the terrible demon's vision. A bright, deafening blast happens in the middle of the forest, lighting up the entire tree canopy around with smoke. Issei approaches Gyeol amidst the smoke, preparing to make the most painful goodbye of his life. The injured youngest lets out a tired groan, seeing the human boy saying goodbye to him with a look of immense pain. Issei desperately apologizes to his injured friend, swearing with all his strength that one day he will finish off that demon. The smoke from the blast keeps spreading through the dark forest, completely hiding their desperate escape. Silence returns for a few moments to the dense woods as the boys run to try and save their own lives. Fast, desperate footsteps echo down the damp dirt path as the survivors try to get away from the danger. Il-Chui runs without looking back with everything he's got. Breathing extremely heavily and exhausted, Gyeol sheds bitter tears alone in the dark forest, painfully accepting his tragic fate. The little decayed wonders quietly if all his friends manage to escape far away to safety already. The other two injured warriors keep running desperately through the thick woods to save their lives. Out of breath and in severe pain, the blue-haired guy laments bitterly over the youngest teammate's tragic fate. He accepts it was for the best, as he didn't want to see anyone pass away because of him, and understands Ice's harsh words. Crying in pain, little Gyeol asks his friends to forget any revenge plans and just try to survive. The giant multi-headed creature with sharp teeth looms terrifyingly in front of the boy left behind on the ground. Under the red nightlight, the terrible demon moves effortlessly to begin its macabre meal in the dark forest. Hidden behind a thick tree, Ys watches it all in complete silence, his face splattered with blood. Terrifying sounds of crunching bones start echoing through the damp air, signaling the tragic end of the young teammate. The disturbing sound of sharp teeth devouring the kid spreads through the dark woods, sending deep chills down his spine. The demon's large, glowing red eyes stand out amidst that bizarre and extremely grotesque scene. Suddenly, Gyeol's face appears fused onto the demon's body, whispering about the cruelty of being left behind. The demon's newly acquired head screams in despair, asking with pure hatred how they could abandon him like that. Ys digs his fingers into the tree bark, completely terrified hearing his friend's voice begging them to wait for him. The monster surges forward through the forest, with the new head crying and promising that soon everyone will join that pain. Back at the temple, patrolling decayed warriors run with lit torches in hand, trying to locate the boys who vanished into the night. Gong-ah wakes up sleepy, rubbing her eyes, and asks one of the residents the reason behind all the sudden commotion in the yard. The lady frantically explains that Il-Chui, Woljang, Gyeol, and even Issa mysteriously disappeared from Guisu Temple during the night. She shares frantically that the warriors have already sent an urgent message to the boss and headed into the forest to search for them. Gong-ah recalls the chat she had with the guys earlier, realizing in shock that they actually disobeyed and went out there. The young Dokaibi's eyes widen in worry, imagining the dreadful danger the boys might be facing out there alone. She looks out at the vast, dark night and silently prays for all the boys to make it back safely to the temple. At another point in the forest, Issei runs with peak agility, wielding his shield and small combat axe. The human boy reflects seriously on the night's events while moving silently through the dark woods. He knows the terrible call he made to leave his friend behind will be burned into his memory forever. He rationalizes that facing the monster together meant the end for everyone, and one sacrifice was the only way to hold a chance at payback someday. That entire inevitable, cold tragedy makes the boy painfully recall similar losses from his own past. He knows attacking now would just be a pointless waste of life, and that the smartest move is simply tracking the demon unnoticed. The human boy vows to find the creature's lair to avenge his family, firmly believing he made the best possible decision at the moment. He remembers Gyeol's gentle smile and sweet words before the fight, which makes that whole call even more painful. However, that pragmatic and cold decision keeps tormenting his thoughts, making him feel a deep self-loathing. He concludes with deep bitterness and silent hatred that all this awful pain only happens because demons continue to exist in the world. Out of nowhere, a warrior's boot stomps firmly onto the trail ahead of him, startling the boy with a familiar voice. It's Go-cheon, a Dokaibi patrol warrior from the temple, who glares at him pretty angrily, yet relieved to find him out there in the forest. The boy recognizes him, while the patroller sternly complains about the massive trouble and worry those kids caused back at the temple. Go-cheon immediately asks where the other boys are, making Issei avert his gaze with a totally somber, sad expression. Issei points toward the bloody remains and reveals they ran into an Aseong Yeongma, and that Gyeol unfortunately ended up being devoured by it. The warrior's eyes go wide in total shock and horror upon hearing that the young kid was taken down and eaten by a demon. Consumed by overwhelming rage, Gocheon clenches his fist so hard his hand starts shaking violently with anger. He demands to know where the creature is and what it looks like, and Issei replies that it's a horse-like monster with multiple human faces. The warrior says he has to hurry and tells the boy to head back to the temple, leaving Issei puzzled upon noticing the patroller doesn't seem to recognize the monster. Issei suggests he wait for backup, but Gocheon fires back, proudly stating he's one of the top 5 strongest dokaibis in the temple in terms of raw power. The young human just lowers his head and remains completely silent before the stubborn determination of the experienced red-haired warrior. Issei decides he's tagging along on the hunt, but Gocheon immediately refuses the help, saying that situation is way too dangerous for a rookie. Issei insists, saying he knows exactly where the creature is, and that top priority must be rescuing the other teammates lost in the forest. Giving in to the boy's persistence, Gocheon orders him to run the moment they spot the monster, and Issei calmly agrees to the game plan. In another spot, Ilchui bites down hard on a tree branch to handle the absurd pain in his arm, while breathing with great difficulty. The young dokebi groans in agony as he tries to stop the heavy bleeding from his arm, violently damaged by the demon's attack. Twisted pieces of flesh and demon teeth lie scattered along the red dirt path of the former battle site. Ilchui anxiously asks if the monster is still tailing them, and Woljang replies in pain that he's okay despite being heavily injured. Woljang cries in deep sadness, questioning if it's right that only they survived. Fearing the absolute worst fate for the abandoned youngest friend, Ilchui yells in rage that they could have saved their friend if they had fought together, blaming Issei for messing with their heads with rationalizations. Woljang calls him an idiot and says bitterly that surviving like this is a disgrace to them as brothers and future demon hunters. Ilchui stands totally frozen with zero reaction upon hearing those harsh, painful truths coming from his own teammate. Suddenly, an obnoxious baby crying starts echoing bizarrely once again in the middle of the dark forest. Ilchui widens his eyes, bathed in tears and sweat, feeling a massive wave of terror build in his chest as he hears the sound. The small, creepy, baby-shaped demon appears floating right in front of the injured young warrior. He stares at the floating creature in surprise, realizing that bizarre being is actually a low-level child demon. The little monster flashes a wide, grotesque grin, letting out a high-pitched squeak in the middle of the silent woods. Out of nowhere, a heavy weapon comes down at high speed and lands a violent blow against the small creature's head. Ilchui screams in rage and delivers a crushing strike, refusing to let a trashy demon make a fool out of him. He takes out all his frustration by blaming Issei, claiming he would have destroyed the bigger demon if the human hadn't gotten in his way. Woljang cries in anger, agreeing with his friend, swearing he'll use his own weapon to avenge Gwaegyeol's tragic end. Consumed by hatred, the young warrior yells with all his might that they must hunt down and wipe out every last demon. But before they can move, the giant multi-headed creature appears silently and terrifyingly right behind him. A surprise, extremely violent attack is unleashed, spraying a massive amount of blood through the forest air. Ilchui stands completely horrified and frozen, witnessing the brutal attack happen right in front of his eyes. He calls out Woljang's name with a shaky voice, seeing him lying lifeless on the ground in the middle of a massive pool of blood. The multi-headed monster steps victoriously over Woljang's still body while the blue-haired youth watches it all in total shock. The grotesque creature flashes a sneering grin, savoring the absolute panic and vulnerability of the surviving hunter. With trembling, bloody hands, Ilchui grips the handle of his metal mace, trying to gather whatever courage he has left. He yells furiously at the demon that desecrated his friend's body, swearing to crush it, just like he did to the floating little creature. With tears in his eyes, he vows to use all his strength to fight for his fallen brothers and honor their memory. He charges forward, screaming for payback, but the demon's massive maw snaps shut violently around him in that very instant. Consumed by the darkness of defeat, his final whispered words are just a lament over unfulfilled vengeance. Out of nowhere, an extremely powerful spear strike slices through the air with precision and hits the monster right on time. Gocheon roars in fury, asking where the demon thinks it's laying a hand by hurting the protected kids of Guisu Temple. Down on the ground, the blue-haired youth opens his tear-filled eyes, seeing his temple's powerful patroller show up to save him. The giant, multi-faced demon is shoved back by the devastating force of the experienced patroller's attack. Gocheon steps up to the front line and yells for Issei to grab Il-Chui and get out of there safely. While he takes care of the creature, Issei supports his injured friend by the shoulders and asks if he can stand, relieved to find him still alive. The monster lets out a gut-wrenching growl of hatred, seeing its meal interrupted by the strong, red-haired warrior. The experienced patroller spins his spear with mastery and delivers another deep slash against the abomination's body. He keeps attacking with relentless fury, landing a fast combo of heavy strikes on the demon's heads. He yells that the monster will pay dearly for hurting the temple's future, promising to make it suffer before taking it down for good. Watching the fight up close, Issei is blown away by the patroller's insane strength, thinking he really might beat the beast, but feels something is off. Il-Chui laments in tears beside the human boy, saying he's the sole one to blame for the tragic end of his two friends. Issei tells his partner to head back to the temple alone while he stays behind to help, but Il-Chui doesn't get why, since the patroller is winning. The boy knows the patroller's strength is superior, but remembers the lesson that exorcising demons isn't decided by raw physical power alone. Issei fears that if the patroller falls into the psychological trap the demon is setting up in the dark, he'll need urgent help. Focus strictly on the fight, Gocheon roars loud, declaring he'll put a definitive end to that battle at this very moment. Suddenly, the heads of the passed-away boys appear on the monster's body, crying and begging their uncle not to hurt them. Gocheon's eyes go wide, and he freezes instantly, seeing the panicked expressions of his young pupils stamped on the beast. Completely shaken emotionally, the warrior stammers Woljang's and Guigeol's names, hesitating to deliver the finishing blow. Taking advantage of this opening, the demon moves fast and impales the patroller's body violently and unexpectedly. Gocheon screams in pain and deep rage, cursing the monster for having the nerve to use the kid's images to fool him so dirtily. Even wounded, he tries to react with fury, launching a desperate counterattack to break free from the enemy's clutches. The youngest's illusory head cries and says his uncle had promised to teach them how to fight with a staff, breaking the patroller's mind. Guigeol's face keeps lamenting about how much they were looking forward to that day, leaving Gocheon totally paralyzed with remorse and pain. The boys' heads beg in tears, saying they're still alive and asking their uncle to save them from that terrible monster. Rationally, Gocheon knows full well those manifestations are just fake illusions from the demon and that he should crush them without hesitation. But overwhelming emotions end up clouding the judgment of any living being with a heart, making him lose his focus in combat. And the terrible demon Aseong Yeongma understands this emotional weakness of living beings in an extremely surgical and perfect way, using the experience from its previous hunts to exploit the love and guilt of its prey. It makes them completely lose the will to fight. The demon knows full well that there's never been a single prey capable of resisting this kind of cruel psychological torture. The MC then lands a direct hit on the creature, and the creature realizes that, right in the middle of all its past prey, an anomaly emerges that is totally different from anything it has ever seen to this day. East charges forward with blood in his eyes, wielding his small axe, telling the patroller coldly to wake up because that thing in front of them is just a demon. If you want the next part, like and comment.